Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this very special program this afternoon on this, what I thought was going to be a beautiful Maroon Friday. It's clouding up and it started raining on me as I was walking from Lee Hall over here, but nonetheless, it's a beautiful day here at Mississippi State. And again, on behalf of our entire university and our community, I want to say welcome. And it's always a good sign when we're bringing extra chairs into an event. That's a great sign because this is a wonderful event. And we're very proud to welcome Dr. McLemore as our esteemed visitor and lecturer this afternoon. Or should I say President McLemore, or maybe Councilman McLemore, or Mayor McLemore. He served as councilman and mayor of our capital city of Jackson, and he and I at one time were colleagues together in the IHL system as he was the interim president of Jackson State University. He's worn many hats in his distinguished career, but I would say the one overarching trait that I think personifies Dr. McLemore in his life and his distinguished career, and that is of service. He's lived a life of service and serving others. And service is something we know a lot about here at Mississippi State. Our three-part mission of teaching, research, and service makes this university a special place. We serve the citizens throughout the entire state and communities all throughout the state of Mississippi. Our faculty, our staff, our students are engaged in serving and helping others to make this state a better place for all of us, a place for us to have a state that we want to live. We want to be able to raise our families here and have a great life. That's what we do at Mississippi State University, and that's what we're committed to as a university. Of course, everything we do here, really, it begins with our students. Our students are by far our number one priority here at Mississippi State. And in 1964, the year of the Freedom Summer, the student population here at Mississippi State University was just over 6,000 total students. Well, on Tuesday of this week at our fall convocation, I had the honor of welcoming 6,000 new students coming to be part of our university for this start of our school year. Our university has grown quite a bit since 1964. Today, our enrollment exceeds 23,000 students total. And it's hard to imagine when you think back, you go back to 1964, what those students on our campus back then would think about our university today. With all the changes that we've seen on our campus, new buildings, new facilities, of course, the large number of students that we have here on our campus. But as I talked to our students at the convocation earlier this week, I asked all of our students to remember who we are as a people. We're special people here. And to embrace and uphold our core values of being a Mississippi State student. And those values are integrity, hard work, and respect for others. That's what makes Mississippi State people so special. And we're also blessed as a university to be part of a very diverse campus today. This campus student body looks a lot different than the student body did in the summer of 1964. We're blessed to be one of the most diverse campuses in the nation. In fact, the diversity on our campus with African American students in particular, we have the highest proportion of African American students of any other university in the Southeastern Conference. And of all the nation's land-grant universities, we are number one. We have the highest proportion of African American students. And President McLemore, this university is second only to Jackson State University in the number of African American students on a college or university campus in the state of Mississippi. I'm very proud of that fact, extremely proud of that fact. You know, the diversity of our student body, as I said, it makes us very special. Diversity is something for us to celebrate and to embrace. Diversity, well, It empowers any institution and, more importantly, the people within it. Diversity brings people together that might not otherwise have an opportunity to be together. And when you can bring people together from different walks of life, different backgrounds, and they can come together, well, they communicate. They get to know one another. And in doing so, well, that displaces fear and prejudice with understanding and with respect. That makes me so proud of us as a university and as a campus, what we represent. Well, again, a lot has happened since the great summer of 1964. And it was brave, courageous young leaders like Dr. McLemore who stepped to the fray and stepped up to provide leadership at a critical time in the history of this state and of our nation. Dr. McLemore has been instrumental in making this world a better place for all of us. And we're honored, deeply honored to have you with us here, Dr. McLemore, as we recognize your accomplishments and talk about those times and days of Freedom Summer. So I'm hopeful that events like this program today will help us have a better understanding of where we have been, what we have accomplished, and the work that's yet to be done going forward. So I look forward to your remarks, and again, welcome to this very special occasion. May God bless you, and hail dear old state. Thank you.
Good afternoon and happy Maroon Friday. I want to echo Dr. Keenum's remarks and welcome you all here to the library. I'm Derek Marshall. I'm an interim associate dean here in the library, and I want to welcome you on behalf of Dean Pankel, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today. But thank you for coming to this important event commemorating the 60th anniversary of Freedom Summer. While you're here, I want to encourage you to take a look at some of the exhibits that we have on display in conjunction with this event. Over here we have some from our archives and special collections, some materials on the Freedom Summer. Across the way over here we have in the Stennis Montgomery room, On Account of Race, the Long Fight for Civil Rights. And then we have downstairs an undergraduate student exhibit from the Creative Writing and Research Literacy Studies class called Revisiting Freedom Summer. Mainly, I want to give a huge thanks to Dee Dee for coordinating this event, and I'll hand it over to her.
Thanks for coming, y'all. I have the distinct honor of introducing Dr. Leslie Burrell McLemore. The son of a sharecropper in Walls, Mississippi, Leslie Burrell McLemore first became politically active in high school when his school library didn't have any books about Black history. As a student at Rust College in Holly Springs, he started the college chapter of the NAACP and became involved with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC, to help with voter registration. He was also a regional coordinator for the 1963 Freedom Ballot campaign. McLemore helped form the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party in 1964, and along with Fannie Lou Hamer, he was one of the delegates demanding to be seated at the 1964 Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City. After graduating from Rust, McLemore continued his studies at Atlanta University and the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where he earned his doctorate in government and helped found the W.E.B. Du Bois Department of African American Studies. McLemore also had fellowships at Johns Hopkins and Harvard. He was the founding chair of Jackson State University's Department of Political Science and later served as dean of the graduate school and founding director of the Office of Research and the Fannie Lou Hamer National Institute on Citizenship and Democracy. McLemore served the city of Jackson as a city council member and president, and he served his birthplace of Walls as a member of the Board of Aldermen. He is the co-author of Freedom Summer, A Brief History with Documents, and the Fannie Lou Hamer National Institute on Citizenship and Democracy, Engaging a Curriculum and Pedagogy. In 2023, the Mississippi Historical Society recognized Dr. McLemore with its Lifetime Achievement Award. So please join me in welcoming Dr. McLemore.
It is the manifest intention of this convention to secure to the state of Mississippi white supremacy. The journal proceedings from the 1890 Constitutional Convention in Mississippi. I will agree that this is a government by the people and for the people. But what people? When this declaration was made by our forefathers, it was for the Anglo-Saxon people. That is what we are here for today, to secure the supremacy of the white race, according to Franklin County Delegate J.H. McGee at the 1890 Constitutional Convention. He vowed to strip voting rights from black citizens, even if it does sacrifice some of my white children or white neighbors or their children. 1890. On the surface, at least, the beginning and the end of Mississippi politics is the Negro. He has no hand in the voting, no part in factional maneuvers, no seats in the legislature. Nevertheless, he fixes the tone so far as the outside world is concerned of Mississippi politics. B.O. Key Jr., Southern Politics, 1949. I quoted Delegate McGee and B.O. Key Jr. because Freedom Summer was necessary because of the attitude. 1890 Constitution, and because of what B.O. Key Jr. said in 1949. He wrote a book called Southern Politics. And B.O. Key Jr. went throughout the American South. And what he did, he captured the political history of the Confederate States in the American South. Until the year I was born, 1940, Mississippi was majority black. B.O. Key Jr. in 1949 was talking about a state where there were no blacks in the legislature, where there were really no black elected officials, period, in our state. But because of the population, today, Mississippi is 38.6% black, the largest percentage of blacks in any state in the Union. So the 1949 politics of Mississippi is reflective of the 2024 politics of Mississippi, although we've made major strides since 1949. We have more than 60 blacks in the legislature, House and the Senate. I serve on a small town board of aldermen in Walls, Mississippi. And we have young 46-year-old black mayor. But in 1949, that was not possible. So you really can't talk about Freedom Summer unless you provide some background. And the background was that Freedom Summer was necessary because of the conditions in 1964 or 1960. Because the modern civil rights movement really had not started in Mississippi. One can point out the fact that Medgar Evers was appointed first permanent field secretary of the NAACP in 1954. And of course, all of us know that Brown versus Board Supreme Court decision was handed down in 1954. So when I was teaching students at Jackson State, they had to remember 2 or 3 important dates. And one was the fact that not only was Brown versus Board in 1954, but Edgar Everett appointed first full-time field secretary of the NAACP. So, so more or less sort of marked the beginning of the modern civil rights movement in 1954 in Mississippi. But of course, you know, there were activities prior to 1954. We all know, and if you don't know, that the veterans, the black veterans coming from World War II, came home after the war, 1945, and began to agitate for the right to vote. Because in the final analysis, the agitation, the protesting, the movement, the freedom movement was really around the right to vote. And it so happened that I was born in 1940 and I went off to college in 1960 and got involved in the civil rights movement at Rush College. So those pictures from left to right, my freshman year, my sophomore year, my junior year, my senior year, and my senior year, I was president of student government. And you can see what a handsome dude I was. So, but you know, for some reason, I didn't think I was that handsome. But the older I get, the better I look back then. But this is freshman year, 1960, and you can see this gray patch. Can you see the gray patch? That was right along here then, but now it's moved back. But anyway, it was there. That's Rush College in 1960, 61, 63, 64. So when I graduated college, I was 23 years old and got involved in the civil rights movement, got involved in my freshman year at Rush College. So this is really a reflection of my sort of personal odyssey as a part of Freedom Summer. But all of the activities leading up to Freedom Summer were an integral part of the things that I was able to do as a student at Rush College between 1960 and 1964. The 115 students stopped in front of the City Hall to begin praying one by one. Brenda first, and then Curtis, and then Hollis, and then Bobby Talbert. And then finally, all of us herded up the steps and into the city courthouse. And then Bob Zellner, who was the only white participant, attacked on the steps as he went up. And then a mob outside waiting, milling around, threatening, and inside they brought the people down, the white people, the so-called good citizens of the town, one by one, to take a look at this Moses guy. And they would come down and stand in front of the jail and say, "Where's Moses? Where's Moses?" This Moses guy was a guy by the name of Bob Moses. Bob Moses was the project director for SNCC in Mississippi. SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, in 1961. And this scene is in Macomb, Mississippi, in July 1961. I share this with you because this is really the beginning of the mass movement in Mississippi. Started in Macomb, Mississippi in 1961. And it was led by this guy, Bob Moses, who was a Harvard educated public school teacher from New York City, came to Mississippi at the request of C.C. Bryant, who lived in Macomb, and Amzie Moore, who lived in Cleveland, Mississippi. And he started the Macomb Project. And the Macomb Project led to Freedom Summer. The Macomb Project led to the development of the Freedom Schools. The Macomb Project led to the development of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. And as a college student at Rust, I was involved in the development of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. So Bob Moses in 1961, and this quote is from Howard Zinn's book called SNCC, The New Abolitionist, the first book written about SNCC, about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, was by Howard Zinn. And he described, Bob Moses described to him, protest, because that was the first protest in modern Mississippi, because they had boycotted the high school, Macomb. And the students really were protesting essentially around the right to vote. So the freedom schools that you read about in 1964, that you heard about during Freedom Summer, the freedom schools actually started in Macomb in 1961. So this Moses guy was leading that effort. And then let me do one more quote here. Jack Newfield wrote in 1966, and he wrote this about Bob Moses. Let me share this with you. He said, Bob Moses' move into Southwest Mississippi was perhaps the most creative and heroic single act anyone in the New Left has attempted. Certainly, much of the subsequent history of the New Left has flowed from that act of Bob Moses disappearing alone into the most violent, desolate section of Mississippi in 1961. Now, to the students, 1961 was important within the context of Bob Moses was clearly not the first person to start the civil rights activity, because I just pointed out that Medgar Evers was appointed the first permanent field secretary in 1954. I mentioned the name C.C. Bryant. C.C. Bryant was president of the Macomb NAACP. C.C. Bryant was one of the persons that invited Bob Moses to come to Macomb to start a voter registration campaign. And so Bob Moses was there. But Bob Moses went into Southwest Mississippi, New York school teacher, an outsider by himself, later along with John Hardy and Reggie Robinson. The three of them, Reggie Robinson from Maryland, John Hardy from Tennessee, Bob Moses from New York. 1961. You know, I cannot paint a picture for you clearly enough for you to clearly understand how important that was in 1961, how brave they were. Over 500,000 Black people eligible registered to vote in 1961, and only 6.7% of them were registered to vote. And of course, except for places like Jackson and Meridian and some of the larger towns, no Black folk showed up to vote. It was just too dangerous. You know, you could get arrested if you showed your NAACP card. My late brother Eugene, my classmate, Dr. John Anthony, my Jackson State University colleague and high school classmate and college classmate. The three of us. Late brother Eugene was a student at Valley State. Johnny and I were at Rust. We were the first Black folk to register in DeSoto County, Mississippi in 1963. And we know the stories of what happened to so many people who attempted to register to vote. Medgar Evers died for the right to vote. So the right to vote is precious. 60 years ago, in those pictures, I was 20, 21, 22, and 23. Eventually, at the end of the summer of 64, I was 24. So today I stand before you as an 84-year-old person talking about something that happened 60 years ago. And I am just absolutely blessed to be here. You are looking at an eyewitness, quite frankly. And we are losing eyewitnesses every day. So I can click it up here. That is disappeared. Technology guy. Oh, I see it now. Okay. All right. These are the founders of SNCC, the Mississippi founders of SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And I share this with you because it is important for us to recognize the real heroes and sheroes that helped to change not only Mississippi, but America. We are here this afternoon together, black and white, because of what these people and other folk did in 1960 and 54 and the years before. But these were the founders of SNCC in Mississippi. These were the people who were in Macomb in 1961. Douglas MacArthur Cotton, who lives in Kosciuszko, Mississippi, still alive. Brenda Travis, who lives in California, still alive. Hollis Watkins passed away. Curtis Hayes Mohammed passed away. Bob Zellner lives on Long Island. Bob Moses passed away. John Hardy lives in Detroit. Reginald Robertson lives in New Orleans. Marion Barry Jr. passed away, the former mayor of Washington, D.C. Chuck McDew in Minneapolis, St. Paul, passed away. Bobby Tabbert lives in Macomb. Ike Lewis lives in Macomb. Travis Britt, I don't know where he is. Charles Melvin Sherrod Jr. passed away. C.C. Bryant passed away. Alan Quinn passed away. Jimmy Travis passed away. But these are the heroes. These are the people that made it possible for us to be here. Of course, these are selective. This is my subjective, but these are the founders of SNCC in Mississippi in 1961. Because before Macomb, people didn't march. People didn't protest in Mississippi. Medgar Evers didn't go door to door registering people to vote. It was too dangerous. So this guy, Moses, who goes to Macomb, Mississippi, goes to Mid-County, and he meets E.W. Steptoe. This is 1961. So, but these are the founders. So, the older I get, and I just had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, I just think it's important that we honor and recognize the people who helped to make the change in this country. Because not only are we talking about change made at Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and state of Mississippi, we're talking about changes made in America, And these people, Bob Moses and these people helped to change our state and helped to change the country. So it's important that we recognize and honor these people. Douglas MacArthur Cotton is going to receive next year an honorary doctorate at Tougaloo because he dropped out of Tougaloo College and went to Macomb to join Bob Moses. Hollis Watkins, who passed away a year and a half ago, dropped out of Tougaloo and received an honorary doctorate before he passed away. But Hollis Watkins and his buddy, his classmate there, Curtis Hayes Mohammed, went to Macomb in 1961 looking for Martin Luther King because they had heard that Martin Luther King was in Macomb. So they wanted to meet Martin Luther King Jr. But instead, they met Bob Moses. And Bob Moses was unlike Dr. King in just so many ways. Not the orator that Dr. King was. By that time, he didn't have a doctorate. He was quiet spoken. He was thoughtful. Dr. King was probably one of the greatest orators of the 20th century, who was also very thoughtful. But they went to Macomb because they wanted to meet Martin Luther King Jr. So this is a picture of me at Rush College, NAACP in 1962. And at the top on the left, second guy from the end, you can barely see the gray patch, but the handsome guy, that's me. And I was the founding president of the college chapter of the NAACP, 1962. Can you think how my mother felt? Can you think about how my family felt when I told them that I was college chapter president of the NAACP? Can you think how my dear mother felt? She was scared to death that her son, her oldest son, her handsome son, was president of the college chapter of the NAACP. Boy, you have lost your mind. (1962). Reverend R.L.T. Smith was a candidate for Congress in the 3rd District. I mention this because this was around the right to vote. This was Bob Moses' idea. This was Bob Moses' idea of running a black person. So Reverend Smith and Reverend Lindsay ran for the U.S. Congress, 1962. 3rd Congressional District, 2nd Congressional District, because the idea is that Moses figured we need to get people registered to vote. So these two men ran for the U.S. Congress, the first black people to run for Congress since Reconstruction, 1962. This was the Moses idea. I share this with you because this is leading up to Freedom Summer. In the very next year, the Freedom Vote Campaign, 1963. This is Aaron Henry, who was state president of the NAACP. And this was on the campus of Rush College in the fall, September of 1963. And Aaron Henry was running for governor of Mississippi. And Reverend Ed King, who was the white chaplain at Tougaloo College, ran for lieutenant governor. This was 1963. This was the Freedom Vote Campaign. And the Freedom Vote Campaign was a mock election, M-O-C-K election. Why did they do that? Why did they have the mock election? They had the mock election because the good white citizens of Mississippi had said, black folk don't have any interest in voting. They really don't want to vote. They have no interest in politics. So they ran Henry and King for governor and lieutenant governor. In the mock election paralleled the regular statewide election in 1963. Governor Johnson was running in the mainstream, the regular election. But so more than 80,000 people voted in the mock election in 1963. And it demonstrated that given the opportunity, that black folk would register and they would vote. But the word prior to that was that no, black folk have no interest. So Aaron Henry was on the campus at Rush College campaigning in 1963 as a part of the mock election. As I pointed out, Henry was statewide president of the NAACP. And the two students with their backs to you there, left the guy is Dr. Raymond Davis, retired college professor living in North Carolina. And the young lady is Rosie Purdy Willis, who lives in Arkansas. Student, they were leading the Freedom Song in 1963 on the campus of Rush College. So the Freedom Vote campaign was very important because the Freedom Vote campaign laid the foundation for Freedom Summer. It laid the foundation for the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, the Freedom Vote campaign. And I was the northern coordinator for the Freedom Vote campaign in 1963. So I took the ballot box to DeSoto County, my home county, to Tate County. I took the ballot box to my hometown, Walls, Mississippi, at night as a part of the Freedom Vote campaign. I took the ballot box from house to house. And my neighbors, my friends, my classmates, my schoolmates who had never ever voted before were able to vote in the Freedom Vote campaign in 1963. You know, I wish I could describe for you how some of those people felt who had never ever voted in life, but they were voting for the first time in this Freedom Vote campaign. They were so happy to see me. Of course, they were concerned about my safety, but they were just so happy to see me. Now, this was not a real election. This was a mock election. This was an imitation election. This was not a real election. But it was so important to them that they felt so important that they were voting for the first time. So this right to vote, this voting thing is important. It really is. Now, I'm not sure how many of those people ever voted in a real election after that, but they voted in the Freedom Vote campaign. And I share this with you because just think, democracy is coming to Walls, Mississippi on this Wednesday night, and Leslie McLemore, their homeboy, is going house to house with the ballot box, and they're voting in this mock election. And to them, that was important. So young people, register and vote. Young people, register and vote and run for public office. Just don't get this great Mississippi State education just for yourself. As the president just pointed out, you know, there's a life of service is important. Use your education. Help get other people registered to vote. But voting is important. So I share that with you because I just felt I just felt I just felt so grateful. I just felt when these people saw me and embraced me and said, "Oh, Macklemore, Leslie," they called me by my nickname, brother. You were here. So voting is important. So 63. And what was Freedom Summer? Freedom Summer was designed to politically, socially, and economically provide uplift for people who had been excluded from the political process for hundreds of years. So let's go back to 1890. Let's go back to the 1890 Constitutional Convention, when Delegate McGee said, okay, let's make sure that black folk don't vote. So all those years later, we're looking at 1964. 1964 Summer Project was developed to bring black people into the 20th century politically, socially, and economically. The goal was to register black folks to vote, establish freedom schools, and build community centers. Hence, the MFDP was the political component, the freedom schools were the social educational component, and the building of the community centers were the economic development component. Lofty goals for people denied the right to participate in the political process for hundreds of years. So that's why Freedom Summer was important. The former name of it was the 1964 Summer Project. That's why it was important, because it was the beginning of modern democracy in Mississippi. It was the beginning. It was an opportunity for people to participate. It was the development of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. The civil rights activist, the late Ann Braden, pointed out, and she said this: there is no myth about the grassroots nature of the MFDP, and its development is probably the single most important thing that has happened in the modern freedom movement to date. She was talking about the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party that was formed in April of 1964, April 26th, in Jackson at the Masonic Temple. That was a 12-person temporary executive committee. And I was a member of the executive committee. At that time, 23 years old at Rush College. And I am the last living soul at executive committee. 1964, April 26. 12 of us. The rest of them have gone to meet the Lord. So I was there at the beginning. And the impact of the Freedom Democratic Party that challenged the regular segregated lily white delegation for seating in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1964. Now, students, you can write term papers or dissertations about the Freedom Democratic Party. Some have been written. But the import of that parallel organization, the formation of it, was important because it gave black people political entrance into the political system in 1964. So you go from Freedom Summer to the founding of the Freedom Democratic Party. Now, we know politics in Mississippi in 64, but just think, Robert Clark was elected to the Mississippi legislature in 1967. He was the first black person elected since Reconstruction. And Robert Clark's election was based on Freedom Summer. Foundation for his election was Freedom Summer. There were 27 other black people elected statewide in 1967 because of Freedom Summer. So Freedom Summer, the three components. Let me just conclude most of you are aware of Freedom Summer through the death of Cheney, Goodman, and Swerner, because that was the beginning of Freedom Summer. They were killed at the beginning of Freedom Summer in June of 1964. Most of you don't know that there were nearly 1,000 volunteers that came to Mississippi to help people register to vote. That these volunteers also helped to start the Freedom Schools. That these volunteers helped to start the Freedom Democratic Party. And all of this started in Macomb, Mississippi in 1961 with this Moses guy. So, students, if you're looking for a term paper topic, think about writing something about Bob Moses. Or think about writing something about the founders, the other founders of SNCC in Mississippi in 1961. Because Freedom Summer laid that foundation. It was called the 1964 Summer Project. And it was called the Macomb Project. And it was the brainchild of this Moses guy. I suggested to the two museums in Jackson back in July that what we ought to do is have a lecture series in honor of Bob Moses at the two museums. We have one in honor of Medgar Evers, but we ought to have one in honor of Bob Moses. Because what Moses did, Moses activated what Medgar Evers had really started. He activated what C.C. Bryant had started. He activated what Amzie Moore had started. He activated what all the other civil rights pioneers had started. He put it into action. So Freedom Summer, we are celebrating it 60 years later because it's important, because it helped to liberate Mississippi. And unfortunately, so many of us at this great institution and other institutions throughout our state don't realize the great sacrifice that people made for us to be in this audience. So, to say your prayers, say a little prayer for Bob Moses, for the people who have to change Mississippi. Let me conclude by saying that there's a town in Mississippi called Liberty. And there's a department in Washington called Justice. And just remember, wherever you go as a Mississippian, that Mississippi contributed so much to this country. America is a different place because of these unknown people that I just listed there, who helped to change our state and helped to change Mississippi. And I'm not bragging, but I was one of the foot soldiers. And I'm a living witness. And I just know that Mississippi is going to be an even better place because of the young people that are graduating from this institution and other institutions. There's work to be done. But remember that in 1961, this Moses guy, this Bob Moses guy, helped to change our state and helped to change Mississippi. Let me thank you for listening to me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, all right, thank you. Oh, okay.
That was a special presentation. We were all gifted this afternoon to have a true living hero for our state and our nation, a firsthand witness, and someone who helped start some wonderful change to benefit all of us as a society. Dr. McLemore, thank you very much. I have something I want to present to you, something we hold very dearly here at this institution. Yeah. It's presented to Dr. Leslie Burrow McLemore in appreciation of his distinguished career in higher education and public service by Mark Keenum on August the 30th, 2024. Ring responsibly. Thank you so very much. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Now I'm told that I can respond to, can't answer, but I'm told I can respond to a few questions. If anybody has a question that I can respond to, I'd be more than happy to. One or two. If not, I'll go eat lunch. Okay. Yes, sir. Ah, good to see you. He was in my church, Walls Chapel CME Church in Walls, Mississippi. And I recommended that he go to Russ College, but he came to Mississippi State. Okay. All right. Very good. Congratulations. You're welcome. Thank you very much. I hadn't said a whole lot about me, but thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, esteem behind my name. I like that. Okay. All right. Okay. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate it. Okay.
I think you were supposed to ring the bell, but it's no. I want to thank you so much, for the insights that you share with us about this really important history. It's remarkable that it has been over a decade since we first celebrated Freedom Summer, the Freedom Summer movement here on campus, as part of a joint celebration between African American Studies, history, sociology. It's been 10 years, so now that we commemorate 60 years of Freedom Summer, I think it's a good time for us to think about its enduring legacy, the legacy that you represent, and the legacy that is for us a challenge going forward as to, what our roles are, what is our obligation. Knowing that history and understanding its importance, it's not enough to simply celebrate and to recognize that history, but it behooves us all to figure out what our next steps are. You mentioned, a real trailblazer in that movement, who I think you're right, his story needs to be told. I think Bob's story needs to be told a little bit more. What's fascinating about that history and that story is that he championed voter rights as part of Freedom Summer in the 60s and 70s. In the 80s, he began a program called Algebra First that sought to bring math skills to all children, particularly underprivileged students in marginalized communities. That's part of the challenge too going forward. What are the fruits, of the civil rights movement? It's these opportunities that we can provide, for children, who have not always had the same opportunities as others historically. So I applaud you, for not just sharing that history with us, but also challenging us to take the next step forward. So thank you. And thank my student for asking that question. All right, and I'm sure we'll have opportunities to ask you more questions during lunch as well. So again, thank you, and thank you all for coming.